the world watched in disbelief. The United States, under Donald Trump, launched tariffs targeting allies and rivals alike. The goal? Protect American jobs and industries. Swift retaliation followed from China, the EU, Mexico, and Canada. The global trading system, built over decades, was under threat. The stakes were high, risking billions in trade and international cooperation. Critics argued these tactics were harmful to the U.S. economy. The trade war escalated with tit-for-tat tariffs. Businesses faced a new, unpredictable landscape. The consequences rippled throughout the global economy. The trade war caused a shift in the global economic order. The U.S., once a free trade champion, was now seen as unreliable. China and the EU moved quickly to strengthen ties with other countries. Mexico and Canada sought to reduce reliance on the U.S. market. The U.S. influence waned as other countries bypassed its market. The trade war, meant to protect American jobs, had the opposite effect. Tariffs drove up prices for consumers and businesses. Farmers faced bankruptcy as China retaliated with tariffs on agricultural products. The automotive and technology sectors saw costs rise and innovation slow. The trade war was a costly battle, inflicting pain on Americans. How long would this reckless experiment continue? Many underestimated China's resolve in the trade war. China, under Xi Jinping, had a different plan. They retaliated with tariffs on key American exports. They sought alternative suppliers and doubled down on technology and innovation. Strengthening ties with emerging economies, China aimed for a multipolar world order. The trade war impacted their economy, but China adapted. They were playing a long game, determined to win. Brazil found itself in a unique position during the trade war. They were major exporters of commodities in high demand by China. Initially, Brazil maintained close ties with the Trump administration, but they realized their interests might not always align with the U.S. Brazil balanced economic interests with geopolitical alliances. India and Russia saw the trade war as an opportunity. India aimed to attract foreign investment and boost manufacturing. Russia strengthened ties with China and sought new markets. The trade war allowed these countries to challenge the global order. They were ready to be rule makers, not rule takers. The transatlantic relationship faced its biggest test in decades. The EU felt betrayed by U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum. They imposed retaliatory tariffs on American products. The trade war forced the EU to chart its own course. They invested in defense, reduced reliance on NATO, and strengthened ties with global powers. The EU doubled down on multilateralism to address global challenges. The economic consequences of the trade war were felt on both sides of the Atlantic. U.S. businesses and consumers faced higher prices for imported goods. Farmers saw exports plummet, and manufacturers delayed investments. The EU economy also took a hit, but its internal market provided a buffer. The trade war exposed vulnerabilities in the global economy. Just-in-time inventory systems were fragile and easily disrupted. Reliance on a single dominant power, the U.S., was questioned. The EU accelerated efforts to forge new trade agreements. They concluded a free trade agreement with Japan, eliminating tariffs on many goods. The EU made progress on deals with Canada, Mexico, and Singapore. They pursued negotiations with China, India, and South America. The EU faced challenges but aimed to balance economic interests with values. The USMCA was supposed to usher in a new era of trade harmony. Negotiated under Trump's trade war, it was touted as a victory for American workers. But it largely maintained the status quo and kept tariffs on steel and aluminum. The USMCA was hampered by a lack of trust and goodwill. It became a microcosm of the challenges facing the global trading system. Mexico, under Andrés Manuel López Obrador, sought to diversify trade partnerships. They strengthened ties with the EU and deepened engagement with China. Mexico focused on strengthening its domestic economy. They invested in education and infrastructure, reducing reliance on U.S. exports. Mexico faced challenges but showed determination to control its destiny. The COVID-19 pandemic dealt a severe blow, but Mexico persisted. Section 3. Northward bound, Canada hedges its bets. Canada, long seen as a quiet and reliable neighbor to the United States, reassessed its relationship with its southern neighbor due to Trump's trade policies. Tariffs on steel and aluminum were seen as a betrayal by many Canadians, who viewed their country as a close ally of the United States. Canada responded by diversifying its trade relationships, strengthening ties with the European Union, and joining the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Canada also sought to deepen economic ties with China, despite tensions between Beijing and Washington. Canada's balancing act between the United States and China highlighted the challenges of great power competition. Section 1. Fields of Discontent, American Agriculture Under Siege. American farmers, once the backbone of the nation and a reliable voting bloc, found themselves caught in the crossfire of a trade war they never asked for. Their livelihoods, tied to the ebb and flow of global commodity markets, were upended as tariffs disrupted long-standing trade relationships and threw the future into uncertainty. China, the world's largest consumer of soybeans, had been a vital market for American farmers. But retaliatory tariffs imposed by Beijing in response to Trump's trade measures sent soybean exports tumbling, leaving American farmers with overflowing silos and dwindling profits. Many were forced to take out loans just to stay afloat, their dreams of passing down the family farm to the next generation fading with each passing season. The pain extended beyond soybeans. China also slapped tariffs on other key American agricultural exports, including pork, corn, and wheat. Prices for these commodities plummeted, leaving American farmers struggling to compete in the global market. The Trump administration offered billions of dollars in aid packages to farmers, attempting to soften the blow and maintain their political support. But the aid, while welcomed by some, was seen by many as a band-aid solution, a temporary fix that did little to address the underlying problems. Farmers knew that their livelihoods depended on access to global markets, and they feared that the damage done to their reputation as reliable suppliers would be difficult to repair. The trade war had sown seeds of doubt and uncertainty that would linger long after the tariffs were lifted. Shifting gears, the automotive industry in the crosshairs. The American automotive industry, a symbol of American industrial might, found itself caught in a complex web of tariffs and trade disputes, its once smooth supply chains disrupted, and its costs rising. The tariffs on steel and aluminum, imposed by the Trump administration on national security grounds, had the unintended consequence of raising prices for American automakers. Steel and aluminum were essential components in automobile manufacturing, and the tariffs added thousands of dollars to the cost of producing a vehicle in the United States. American automakers, already facing stiff competition from foreign rivals, saw their profit margins squeezed, forcing them to raise prices for consumers or absorb the losses themselves. The trade war also disrupted the intricate web of cross-border supply chains that had come to define the automotive industry. Parts and components flowed freely between the United States, Mexico, and Canada under NAFTA, but the uncertainty created by the trade war and the renegotiation of NAFTA into the USMCA made it difficult for automakers to plan for the future. Some automakers responded by shifting production to other countries, taking advantage of lower labor costs and less restrictive trade policies. Others delayed investments in new plants and equipment, waiting for the dust to settle before making long-term commitments. The trade war had injected a level of uncertainty into the automotive industry that was felt from the factory floor to the executive suite. Silicon Valley stumbles. The tech sector feels the pinch. The American technology sector, a shining beacon of innovation and a driver of economic growth, found itself unexpectedly vulnerable in the crosshairs of the trade war. Tariffs on Chinese imports, particularly on electronics and components, disrupted the intricate global supply chains that had fueled the tech industry's rise. American tech giants like Apple, Intel, and Dell relied heavily on Chinese manufacturing for everything from iPhones to laptops to servers. The tariffs, imposed by the Trump administration in an effort to protect American intellectual property and reduce the trade deficit with China, had the unintended consequence of raising costs for American tech companies. The tariffs also slowed innovation, as American tech companies found it more difficult and expensive to source the components they needed to develop and manufacture new products. The trade war created an atmosphere of uncertainty, making it difficult for tech companies to plan for the future and invest in research and development. While American tech giants had the resources to weather the storm, smaller tech companies and startups, with their limited cash flow and reliance on global supply chains, were hit particularly hard. The trade war threatened to stifle innovation and slow the growth of one of the most dynamic sectors of the American economy. The Trump administration had touted American energy independence as a cornerstone of its economic policy, but the trade war, coupled with other factors, cast a shadow over this ambition. While the United States had become a major producer of oil and natural gas thanks to the shale revolution, its energy sector was not immune to the forces of global trade. China, a major importer of American energy products, including liquefied natural gas and crude oil, responded to Trump's tariffs by seeking alternative suppliers. They turned to other energy exporters, such as Russia and Qatar, diversifying their energy imports and reducing their reliance on the United States. The trade war also contributed to volatility in global energy markets, creating uncertainty for American energy producers. Oil prices, already subject to fluctuations due to geopolitical tensions and supply and demand dynamics, became even more unpredictable as the trade war escalated. The trade war, combined with the growing urgency of addressing climate change, accelerated a global shift towards renewable energy sources. China, despite its continued reliance on fossil fuels, emerged as a leader in solar and wind power, investing heavily in renewable energy infrastructure and technology. The United States, meanwhile, risked falling behind in the race to dominate the clean energy technologies of the future. The trade war, launched with promises of quick victories, has instead revealed the high cost of miscalculation. Tariffs intended to punish rivals have boomeranged, inflicting pain on American businesses, farmers, and consumers. The global trading system has been shaken, leaving a legacy of distrust and uncertainty. America's reputation as a reliable partner and champion of free trade has been tarnished. Allies, once confident in America's leadership, have been alienated, seeking new partnerships. The trade war has exposed a fundamental misreading of the globalized world. The trade war has left the world more fragmented, the global trading system more uncertain, and the balance of power more fluid. The United States, once the undisputed hegemon, finds its influence waning as other nations and blocs assert themselves on the world stage. The rules-based order, already under strain from rising nationalism and geopolitical competition, has been further weakened, raising the specter of a more chaotic and unpredictable future. China, capitalizing on America's retreat from multilateralism, has seized the opportunity to expand its economic and political influence. The Belt and Road Initiative, a vast infrastructure project spanning continents, has extended China's reach deep into the developing world, forging new dependencies and challenging Western models of development. The European Union, grappling with internal divisions and external challenges, is nonetheless seeking to chart a more independent course, balancing its economic interests with its commitment to multilateralism and a rules-based order. The comprehensive economic and trade agreement with Canada, the trade deal with Japan, and the ongoing negotiations with other partners are all part of this effort to diversify its economic relationships and strengthen its position in a changing world. The trade war has also accelerated the rise of regional blocs and bilateral agreements as countries seek to hedge their bets and secure their economic interests in an increasingly uncertain world. From the Trans-Pacific Partnership to the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, new trading arrangements are being forged, reshaping the global economic landscape and creating both opportunities and challenges for businesses and nations alike. The trade war serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the interconnectedness of the global economy and the perils of protectionism in a world where cooperation is more essential than ever. The path not taken, the path of dialogue, diplomacy, and a commitment to a rules-based trading system, offered a more sustainable and equitable path to shared prosperity. The road ahead remains uncertain, but the need for a course correction is clear. The United States, if it wishes to reclaim its leadership mantle, must abandon its zero-sum approach to trade and embrace a more cooperative and strategic approach that recognizes the interconnectedness of the global economy. This will require engaging with allies and rivals alike, rebuilding trust, and working together to address common challenges, from climate change to pandemics to technological disruption. The global trading system, while battered and bruised, remains the best hope for a more prosperous and equitable future. Reforming and strengthening this system, ensuring that it works for everyone, not just a select few, will require a renewed commitment to multilateralism, a willingness to compromise, and a shared vision of a world where trade is a force for good, not a weapon to be wielded against others. The trade war has been a costly detour, but it has also provided an opportunity for reflection and renewal. The lessons learned from this experience, if heeded, can guide us toward a more cooperative and prosperous future, one where trade serves as a bridge between nations, not a barrier. The time for a course correction is now, before the damage done becomes irreversible.